Hey all, Crusher Jones here. Much shorter introduction this time, because this is something I don't really want to talk over too much. What you'll hear today is a long talk I did with Zac Bertschy, who is the executive editor of Anime News Network until his passing in May 2020. This was originally an interview I was doing for a podcast series about balancing life, work, and creative concerns. And I never released the full series, but I hope to share some of them with you, starting with this one. This one in particular is important because really, I miss Zac. And also because this was our first big one-on-one talk. I think that energy is there in this recording, along with some fun tech issues which we both laughed about. And that's part of why I'm excited to share it. It's not a formal interview, nor was that the intention. There are definitely some rabbit holes here, and yeah, a lot of them are about me, but that was a goal. I should also note that yes, we both talk about periods of deep depression, abuse, and self-hate here, so let it be known that it does get a bit intense. But this was a good chat, with somebody I cared about, and we had an interesting and fun relationship. And again, I miss the guy. And I know I'm not alone in that. So with that said, this is my long-form discussion with Zac Bertschy from January 2018. We talk about life stuff for the first 75 or so minutes, along with some other things, and then we mostly talk about media. I hope you enjoy it. Take care.
I was going to say this is Thursday, and I forgot if it's Thursday or Wednesday.
It's Wednesday.
Oh, well, already. See, look, worth the price of admission.
Yeah.
In and of itself. Okay, so. Yeah, I remember driving in Glendale being something that was a little easier for me because I didn't have to be anywhere. I didn't go into an office for 3 years. And so I was working from my house, and it was great, and I had my own schedule, and my girlfriend lived not really far down the road, so I got to pick and choose. However, when I had to drive in Glendale and be somewhere on daywalker hours, absolute fucking nightmare.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't want that.
well, I'm glad. I hope your issue was your last one vis-a-vis car getting smashed.
Well, no, I just moved into a place that has 2 blind spots on either side of the driveway. And I'd lived in Glendale for like a week, and I was inch, and then bang. Yeah, but no, I don't commute. I work from home, so.
Yeah, that you've avoided the. Did you get to hear the horrible plastic sound though? The car crunching.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, living dangerously in the backyard with Mr. Zac Bertschy.
Yeah.
Properly pronounced?
Yes, you did. You got it right. I know it's a tough one.
Oh well, thank you. I try. I'm feeling a bit of intimidation because I've done 2 podcasts 2 days in a row with people who have podcasts and people who regularly broadcast. And I'm just sitting here going to myself like, yeah. Afraid I'm not going to do a good enough job and will turn into Chris Farley.
I think I think you're doing fine so far.
I just thought I'd own it off the top of the key. Happy New Year.
Thanks, same to you.
It's a pleasure to see you. You looking good. Back from New Orleans?
Yeah. New Orleans was interesting for Christmas. I have family out there. Hadn't seen them in a while, so decided to take the trip. It was good.
Yeah, and the weather switching from moving from one place to another is always the weirdest thing for me.
Yeah. Well, it's way colder in New Orleans than it was like 50 there, or maybe 45. We came back to Los Angeles, it was like 70, 75. It was beautiful. It's great. It reminded me like, oh, I love living in Southern California. I'll never leave.
Yeah, it's always kind of thrown me. When I showed up I live in Chapel Hill now, as you know, and I'm going to school out there. Go approved sports team that doesn't sponsor this podcast. And the first night I got there, I've got great stories from this first semester. First night I got there, I had been renting an apartment for 2 months that I hadn't set foot in. Just saw this place online, loved it. It was brand new. Friend of a friend went out there to check it out. I paid her to go look at it. She gave me a bunch of pictures that were fantastic. She said, look, you need this place because it'll keep me from taking it from you. And so I was excited, and actually I got a brother who lives in Nashville, which is really cool, and crashed out with him the night before after this drive across the country, and showed up there at 1:30 in the morning. was tired. Red Bull and push-ups all the way,
Yeah.
which is the, like, oh, God. I've mentioned 2 Red Bull issues. I need to get past that one. But I show up at 1:30, and just it's a blanket of heat in
Right.
North Carolina during that part of the summer. And I'm just going, okay, it's hot, but it's fine. I'm here. I've made this journey. I spent years studying for this. Sleep is on the way.
Right.
I actually had some family members visit the apartment and put stuff in it for me. It's
Yeah.
like here's a couch and a bed, which is awesome.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, right. And so I get in there. I'm going like, okay, the electronic door lock is here. I wrote them earlier in the day saying, hey, make sure the deadbolt's not a thing. Beep, 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 beep. It goes green. I start grasping the handle to go upstairs to crash. I hear that metal sound of a deadbolt,
Yeah.
and I just realized they locked you out of the apartment anyway.
Right.
So I spent my first night in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, driving across the country, sleeping in a car in 90-degree heat and 100% humidity.
Wow.
The landlord shows up next day. He's like, oh, I thought you were in the building. He's like, no, remember I wrote and I asked you to not lock the deadbolt. So overcoming adversity is today's theme.
Okay. All right. I know a little bit about that.
Definitely. It appears you are in fine fiddle. Fettle?
Is that a term?
I thought it was fine fettle.
I don't think I've ever heard that term.
All right.
What does
well,
that mean?
Got you looking good, having
Thank
your stuff
you.
together.
Fine fettle.
Yeah.
What is that? Okay, I'll look it up.
The thing is, I've got the computer right there, but I would rather leave it hanging
Sure,
to hear
just-
like
yeah,
people
no.
say horrible shit on Twitter.
I don't know spoilers. I'll figure it out
Yeah.
for myself.
Luke is not a hologram. Okay, so moving on. What's your best self-descriptor these days? Because I think of you and I think, well, you're a writer, you're an editor, you're a freelancer, you're doing comics, you're streaming.
You know, I think I ask myself that because I'm 38 and I have been doing this thing that I do now for 17 years. I've been writing about or managing people who write about anime for 17 years, and culture and society have changed like dramatically in those 17 years. And so, like, when you say like, how do you sum yourself up? To me, that question is like, so what's your brand? Right?
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about that, like, what is that? Because I don't put any effort into it, and I just do what I want to do and what seems like fun. But I have a lot of varied interests. I like doing a lot of different things. So, like, just like, how do you describe yourself? Well, I'm Zach.
Yeah.
That's it. You know, like, I don't like, I'm the executive editor of Anime News Network. That's my job, and that takes up most of my time. So that is, I guess, my biggest self-descriptor. But I think I prefer just, well, I'm Zach, and as any person is more complicated than one little thing.
Here's
like
what you
that.
do.
Yeah. What I do is I'm the executive editor of ANN. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
I was hoping you'd say, I am Zach, and then just a lightning bolt appears behind you.
Yeah.
And ZAC
Yeah, right.
in
It's
neon
like that scene
starts
in Boogie
flashing.
Nights with the name in neon, right?
I hit up flashing as a verb there, and you know what?
That's
Sticking
good.
with it.
It's a good one. I like
Yeah.
it.
So 17 years
Yeah.
of your current position.
Not. So I
Oh,
started
actually,
out as a writer, and then I went to Wizard magazine. If people reading this have any, or listening to this have any recollection of that particular publication, was a pretty famous comics magazine through the 90s and the 2000s. I'm getting a little closer for you.
Thank you.
Through the 90s and the 2000s, and I was there for about a year and a half in upstate New York, and then my boss at Anime News Network gave me a call and was like, I have a job for you if you want. You know, we're hiring people to just work at ANN, which was not, at that point, was still a hobbyist site, pretty much.
Yeah, we discussed it pretty
I'm
thoroughly
sure-
with the
Yeah, I'm sure you had Justin on to talk about that.
my dear friend Justin.
Yeah. And so he's like, well, we're hiring people. So I was the first person he hired was our webmaster. I was the second person that he hired. And I was like, and I was living in upstate New York at the time, totally fucking miserable in the snow.
Albany?
Upstate Nyack, which is about 20 minutes north of the city, about a half hour north of the city.
Yeah.
And
where you hear things like that.
yeah, no, look, I have a podcast. This is just part of it.
No, I love this.
It's just part of it.
I love this.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. Like, hey, everybody, I'm in my soundproof studio with my $18,000 Taylor
No.
acoustic guitar. Hell no.
You're gonna get airplanes and garbage trucks, all that kind of fun.
Sirens, traffic, dogs
Yeah.
barking. I love it.
All of it.
At first, I was like, that's annoying. I'm like,
Yeah, no, you want it.
what was it?
You want it
Stern?
in there. It's flavor.
Yeah. So you're Nyack.
Lived in Nyack. The first winter I had to dig my car out of the snow. I was like, fuck this.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this. I hate it. I was depressed and miserable. And so I not only had I met someone in California that I was kind of seeing, you're doing that stupid long distance internet thing.
Can't relate.
And yeah, right. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And she was like, well, you could just move in with me. Mm-hmm. By the way, not a super great idea. But I moved in with her. I took the job, moved in with her out here in well, at that time it was in Orange County. And at that point, I had become the executive editor of the site and was in charge of all the editorial. So everything that's not news. So reviews, interviews, feature editorial, convention coverage, all that kind of stuff. That's what I do. Hey, buddy.
Oh my goodness.
There's a dog here.
Yeah, a dog appeared. See?
He's a cutie.
This is totally worth the effort.
And so that was in about 2005. So coming up 15 years. I'm like 12, 13 years in, I guess, at this point. Something like that. Yeah, something like that.
Just 14.
Just today and then. Yeah, that's pretty much what's up.
Well, you're from Arizona, Tucson, right?
Yeah, I grew up in Tucson, Arizona. Well, I grew up about like 20 miles west of Tucson, in the middle of fucking nowhere. Like, I went to the most... Oh, was it okay to swear?
Oh,
Okay, all right.
putting that E on iTunes.
Okay. My parents lived in the middle of nowhere. There's a park called Saguaro National Monument out there, famous for the highest concentration of saguaro cacti. We lived on the edge of that opposite town. So town's on the other side of the monument. We're on the other side of the monument of that, way out in the middle of nowhere. I grew up out there.
Oh, yeah.
And it was terrible, and I left as soon as I could.
Parker interlude.
Yeah.
There's a beagle.
I left as soon as I could.
Yeah.
But I have fondness for Tucson, and I have a lot of fondness for southwestern Arizona. But I always said, like, if I ever wind up living back here again, something terrible has happened.
Yeah. Well, actually, the guy who does, I discussed it before, the guy he kind of does, I guess, research, you say, about the podcast. A very good friend of mine, Mike. He comes up here and there because he's like the ghost that hovers above this thing, the spectre. He was a drummer in a band I used to tour with, and a really, really cool guy. And he was saying, no, man, Tucson's hip.
Yeah.
Don't get twisted.
No, it's a little blue dot in the center of a very red state.
Definitely. I saw some rad music there. I played some shows there. I had a really good time there. But he was like, and he's out there now working with Half Price Books.
Oh, yeah.
And because they want to get into like cons and stuff like that. He's like, oh yeah, I'm down. And so he had done much of that, but he had let me know, oh no, it's there's some hip stuff out there. Now the thing is, like anywhere else, I'm from Houston, but I'm from a town 45 miles outside of Houston.
Right, yeah.
And the thing about most cities everywhere in the world I've seen, except for a couple of sprawling metropolises, you're like 20 miles out, you're out.
Yeah.
Like, it just goes,
Yep.
that slide into rural. So,
Yeah.
I grew up, and going into the next question, this is my tie-in, because I'm very pro when a dog's not hitting me. I was wondering how you caught the media bug, because you're insanely media literate, and we're around the same age, and I'm sure you can remember what it was like in the early 90s, or even the 80s, going far back, where it's like, okay, well, this is my option, and it kind of sucks. How'd you find other stuff?
So, that's interesting. So, as a kid, I just never I've always been an animation person. I just never gave up on it. Like, I went through you go through a phase as a kid where you're watching nothing but cartoons. I never really grew out of that, except that it turned into a particular interest with the business side of it and the artists who made it. So I started reading production books, like getting into the behind the scenes stuff when I was a kid.
Yeah, like
when
you
I
knew
was,
who
like,
Tex Avery was.
Yeah, yeah, I knew
stuff.
who all those people. Like I knew who Glenn Keane was when I was like 10 years old. You know, and all of those famous Disney animators. You know, the people that worked on all that Renaissance stuff. And then I started reading more about the history of that, and like, so I was just fascinated by it and fascinated by the art of it to begin with, and then that led me down the rabbit hole of getting interested in art, like formally, like actual art. But back in the day, like I just had like this insatiable like thirst, like lust to just consume and like take as much in as I could. There was just something about it. Like I lived at the video store, I went to the movies as often as I possibly could. Like I devoured every piece of information about everything. I had the internet at a very young age. Like I said, I'm in my late 30s, but I had the internet when I was like 10.
Yeah.
We had a 2400 baud modem in my house, and we used like Telnet and Gopher and stuff like that to go online, like Usenet, you know, back in the day. Yeah, so a lot of information came through that way. I read a lot that way, and
Rec Arts Anime.
Yeah, Rec Arts
Animation.
Yeah, all that stuff. All that stuff.
Yeah.
And there were a couple forums, I think, back in the day. But that was in the mid 90s, you know, early 90s, really, like 92, 90, 91, 92.
Yeah.
And that when you're a kid and you just want to fill the hole with media.
Yeah.
And you have the internet at that young age, like you can just sit there and fill yourself up, you know. And I went to the library a lot, and like it was just kind of this insatiable curiosity, this interest in it, and I liked following box office, and I liked following performance and all of that stuff, and that kind of spreads out over a bunch of different types of media, but my passion has generally always been movies and video games and cartoons, animation specifically. Not in that order, probably animation first and then the other stuff, but that's I think that's kind of where it started. And then as you got older and the information technology got bigger and spread and was wider and everything, I was able to keep it going, really, and now everyone, I feel like most of the people I run into or associate with are at least as media literate as I am. Like maybe not, like maybe they can't like recall the character actor or the stupid ass movie that this guy was in like I can, but like they know, like people know what they're talking about. You know, like I'm a big Disneyland hobbyist too, right? I spend a lot of time there, and back in the day, people used to like hit me up for like tips, like,
hey, where do I
do?
go?
Yeah, now they all already know it themselves.
Yeah.
They just go online and they want to devour all that information too. Like they had that same curiosity. They just never had the impulse to really follow through with it. And the internet makes it a lot easier for them to do that.
Yeah.
You know. Whereas back in the day, I was digging through the library and like the internet was still this sort of walled off thing for weird nerds only. So that's when you have access to that information. You know, in a similar way, it's kind of like the old days with anime, where it was really access to it that differentiated you from other fans. Like, you could love anime, but only if you put the time in to get the tapes yourself.
Yeah.
Actually start trading tapes yourself. That meant you really gave a shit, right? And you were really figuring out about the shows and figuring out what's new and bringing all this stuff in. Like, that really meant you cared. Now you can just look it up. But I think that's kind of where it started. Was like, there was kind of a reward for caring, you know? More of a reward, anyway.
More of a reward. More of a reward for caring.
Yeah, for caring, I guess. But yeah.
Well, what always got me about that period of it, as they remake RoboCop behind us, what always got... I was just like...
That wasn't a good remake. They should remake it again.
And again. And again.
Yeah,
and again. MikeMyers.jpg. What got me about looking at that stuff, because I remember that whole weird thing of I'm gonna get on the internet and I'm gonna mess about and I'm gonna go some places. You really were like gambling and rolling the dice when you clicked on something or you clicked towards something, not even like graphical interfaces. Like I would end up in a place where like, what the hell's going on here? A lot of times there's some things I can't unsee.
Yeah.
Then I wasn't even trying to get to that level of unsee.
Yeah.
But what always got me about those early days were somebody would say something and they were so pseudo-certain about it. And years later, I remember something somebody had said about an animation that in some cases I had never seen, or a film I hadn't watched, and I had followed up on it at some point and realized that person just bald-faced lied about the shit.
Yeah, or they misrepresented it, or they didn't know what they were talking about, which is usually more the case. And like back then, it really was a lot less transparent. Like there was a lot more anonymity back then. Like,
you could fake news pretty hard.
yeah, you could. I mean, you still can, but you know, you could. You very much could. And if you were the strongest personality in a bulletin board system, you could get away with a lot. Like, you get away with a lot.
I had people. I've heard some horror stories. One was this guy sent in tapes to somebody to make him copies of something, and the other person who made the original copies were like, "Don't give this person copies." And so they kept the kid's tapes and didn't give him the money back or anything else like that.
That sounds like something they would do back then.
And I was like, "That's a real classy dick pig move."
Yeah.
And what's interesting, there's been all this academic writing and stuff that I've followed just because I've been in the same place at, say, USC, and there's all the reports on fandom and nerdom and whatever, and a very good friend of mine, Patrick, has written several books on fandom that are very good. And they talk about the old days of fandom, and there's a little bit, and everybody kind of gets a bit of a glint in their eye, and, oh, we were just pioneers, and et cetera, et cetera.
No, it was awful.
Yeah, it fucking sucked a lot of the time.
It was terrible. They're just gatekeeping old white dudes as far as you can see, and they would trade access to anime for favors and shit, and like, yeah, I don't
so
miss,
much creep vibe.
I don't miss those days.
And
I don't think about it like, oh, I wish I was paying like $25 to have 3 tapes with 12 episodes of Kenshin mailed to me, and then I'd have to fight the guy at the anime club for the next tape of Escaflowne, or figure out how to get it myself. And largely, that's why I started figuring out how to get it myself, because these fucking gatekeepers, who needs them? I could become my own, you know, and be more egalitarian about it. Spread everything around, you know.
Yeah, there was, with the exception of certain things, like growing up in Houston, you know, they'd always say, well, Austin's where they have that real club for that nerd stuff you're into, of almost any type, by the way.
Yeah.
But, you know, you go in there and you turn the TV on a Saturday morning, and there would be a major influence on actually what I'm studying right now with this focus on abandonment in the city, this film called Mobile Police Pat Labor, or Kiki's Delivery Service. That would be on public access TV with subtitles.
Yeah.
I was like, what the hell?
That's
what is
cool.
this magic?
Like Pat Labor 2?
It was the first Pat Labor
Oh, okay.
that I remember.
Not the good one, but yeah. Not the best one.
Well, that's actually one of my favorite films, and I may or may not have written an entrance paper to
Oh, really?
USC
On Pat
on
Labor
that
1?
On Pat Labor 2.
Pat Labor 2, right.
Yeah.
Yes, that, yeah.
Pat Labor 1 actually has some other stuff that I'm interested in. This is all, it's things I've written about. I mean, my main specific focus of academic interest is abandoned buildings and the communities that explore them.
Right.
And there's a lot of parallels between fans of all kinds of types. And we talk about gatekeeping, and we talk about things like that. Like, there's literal gates
Yeah.
in what I'm looking at.
Yeah, right.
Like,
right.
hey, don't go in the sewer this time of year because it rains and you'll die.
Right.
Like, you'll flat out die.
Yeah.
But that same level of gatekeeping sort of literally applied versus the awful beardo horseshit
Yeah, that's interesting.
that I was subjected to. I'm one of those people, it's like, I watch movies and go like, hey, that background's way more interesting than anything you have going on with the characters.
Yeah.
Like, straight up, just the movie Jerry. That's basically...
Jerry. Yeah, I'll actually kind of defend that movie. But I'll defend a lot of the dumb shit Gus Van Sant has done.
I love... Speaking of creative process and creativity, I love a good, noble failure.
Oh, yeah, me too.
I love a movie that is terrible in such a unique and interesting way, or weird.
We had one just last year. Mother. Darren Aronofsky's Mother. Was one of those, I think. It's a horrible failure, but I'm fascinated by it.
Wasn't it his kind of stab at Lars von Trier?
Yeah, it felt a little like a Von Trier movie. That's what it felt. It reminded me most of like Antichrist, but it's such a shrieking, horrible hot take of a movie, and it's fascinating. It's also really well shot because Aronofsky knows what he's doing with the camera. But
yeah, I'm going to have to. Oh my goodness, this is adorable. Sniffing? Well, I don't know. Oh, yep. Yeah. This is Parker. It's Parker's house. We just live in it, and Parker will find food anywhere.
Yeah,
like that beagle runs the town. But no, I love a good noble failure in any form. Like, I'd much rather see it. I like fan art. I've seen better and better fan art over the years, and I always think to myself, man, you are now at a point where you need to move into something of your own, because I'm so excited about your degree of talent and ability that I want to see a noble failure from you, because I will think it would be 10 times more interesting than a successful, like, here's a picture of Mario that I'm putting on a t-shirt on Etsy.
Yeah.
And I look at something like, I can't wait to buy the director's cut of this. I'm prepared for you to roll your eyes so hard that it'll fuck up the foundation we're on even more.
Yeah.
The Counselor.
I feel the exact same way. You and I are on the same page.
The Counselor?
Yeah. I fucking hated The Counselor.
Oh my god, it's such a horrible thing.
I thought it was like actively bad. Like that one, I get what you're saying. But that is one of those ones where I put it in the nope, straight up bad.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right that it's one of those fiascos.
It's one of those things where it's just like, this Cormac McCarthy wrote this fucking thing?
Yeah, not the way he shot it.
Yeah, and it's just and it just kind of seems like the literal script was on fire. It's like, well, a knight directed this?
Yeah.
Because, he's a knight.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I have a friend who defends The Counselor, like, to his death. Like, he's like, this is Ridley Scott's masterpiece. And I was like, you're crazy.
Is that the guy from the Beta Male podcast?
Yeah. Yes,
oh.
Corey, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I remember hearing that podcast. I'm not a regular listener. Hi, Corey. But I just remember thinking, you know what? That's why I didn't like that movie, but I just like, this is terrible in a way that I can enjoy its terribleness.
I may need to revisit it.
Do you have access to medical marijuana?
Of course. Yes.
California 2018. Not me.
There was a line from that movie that was...
And then she fucked my car.
Yeah, well, there was that, but then he said something like... Can't remember the line, but there's a famous line about a vagina in that movie that I can't quite recall. But it was like the go-to line if you wanted to describe how bad The Counselor was. Can't remember it.
Harvey and Bardem's hair.
Yeah, right, yeah.
But I really do think it's great to see somebody go no holds barred at something.
Yeah, the end of Evangelion is like that.
Yeah.
I think that's a resounding success, but it's like that. It's one of those movies.
Yeah, I really... I just watched The Disaster Artist.
Oh, yeah. What'd you think of that?
I had fun with it. I watched 20 minutes of The Room, and I was like, this is just Skinamax. I mean, we've discussed here and there on this same very podcast, we've discussed like B movies and B culture and trash science fiction stuff that I was steeped in growing up. A lot of that looks a lot better through the rose-colored glasses of the past, and a lot of it looks a lot better watching trailer collections on YouTube. Yeah. Which I'm going to be linking the hell out of in show notes, just for all the things that get referenced. But kind of going back to it and saying, oh, okay, well, here's this thing now, and I'm like, I just watched like 20 minutes of this, and I'm like, this is just the horrible shit you saw on Skinamax, or sub.
It's transcendently much more than that. I think like the performances and what he's making and the story of it and everything is like, you're absolutely right that is the aesthetic. Yeah, and like that's what it feels like. But as a film, I think you have to give it its props for being uniquely entertainingly bad.
I skipped right past the work and moved right into the phenomenon. Okay. Like, I wanted to know, okay, let me go read up about the rest of it. Like, I found the Wikipedia interesting.
You should read the book.
Yeah.
You should absolutely read the book, because the movie's a pretty major letdown if you read that book. Because Greg Sestero is a really smart, affable person who was never... Like, the person that he's portrayed at is in the film...
Kind of lost.
It's not him. He was not some weird sycophant who was just like, sure, Tommy, whatever you say. Like... That is not who that dude was. That's who James Franco's brother wanted. But that movie, I call it like Funny or Die presents The Disaster Artist, because it's like a long Funny or Die sketch, and it's me and my comedian pals got together and we wanted to recreate these scenes from this funny movie. That's the whole thing. But that book is really good. It's really good. It deserved a better or more straightforward, a more spiritually faithful adaptation.
Spiritually faithful is a term I wouldn't have really ascribe to The Room or whatever, but I was just
the book is real. The book has a lot in it. Like I really do strong no irony or anything. It's a very good book about a very weird weird relationship.
You are not winking.
Yeah.
There's very little winkage going on. But I like the thing about that is so weird. I want to sit down and spend the time with it. I also was not part of the group phenomena.
Yeah, I was.
Of being... I actually had ended up back in America right when it had gotten big or whatever, and people were mentioning it, and I was like, oh man, I should have been there, and
That was like 10 years ago or so.
Yeah, about
10, 12 years ago.
Yeah, summer, fall 2008.
Yeah.
I remember people in San Francisco were just batshit over it.
Yeah, a couple of years before that, I think, is when like David Cross was like pushing it in like independent theaters, and I think that was around then. The comedy scene in Los Angeles found that movie.
Yeah.
And they are pretty, like him and Paul Rudd and like a few others.
Yeah. They didn't really have to try.
Yeah, they didn't have to try very hard.
They had a billboard.
They are pretty much the people responsible for that movie being what it is. But yeah, anyway.
You know, they had that billboard up in on Highland.
Yeah, yes, for a very long, famous billboard.
For 5 years, and that's around that area. I used to live there. That's where, I mean, I walk down the street and I'd see the guy who did Get Out.
Yeah, right.
Was it Jordan Peele?
Yeah, it's Jordan Peele.
Yeah, and just be like, "Hey, I like your show. Oh, great, man. Take it easy." I was like, "Cool," and it was more. I don't really. I was into film myself, and I love media, but I never gave a shit about the famous thing.
Well, celebrities, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're in it for the art.
Yeah, and it wasn't any disrespect. Like,
Yeah.
I always love. I'm talking to some people who are coming in and some other actors and stuff like that, and you know they know some of them are my friends and I care about them, and everybody I'm gonna have the conversation with, like, yeah, cool, let's have this discussion. But it was never something where like, oh my god.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of so focused on that as my attention drifted to other things,
Yeah.
I could still appreciate it for what it was and not get lost in it.
Yeah.
So, but with something like The Room, that phenomenon of people's excitement about it, I wasn't there for it.
Yeah.
So now my appreciation of it is so weirdly clinical and removed
Yeah.
that it's like looking at a historical event from 30 years ago in a different country where I don't speak the language.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it was like a riff tracks in like 2008 or 2009 maybe that everyone passed around. I don't know. But yeah, that was detached. That was after the fact. That was like after, you know, all these people had kind of discovered it. But anyway.
Yeah, jumping back in from that one. Oh, can I get you a little closer to the mic?
Yep, sorry.
I realized.
Sorry.
And I can shift that chair around.
No,
whatever you want to do.
it's fine. Let me just get real close here.
Yeah, get as comfy as you like.
Okay.
I'll bring out pillows.
No, it's fine.
I'll rub your feet.
Can I? No, don't do that. Everything's okay. How's this? Is this all right?
Yeah,
I
if
can
you're
sit
okay
back?
with it.
Okay, yeah, I'm fine like this.
Yeah, man. Whatever works. I'm cutting this whole section anyway, so fuck me in the eye.
Yeah.
So going back to it though, and I hope we're encapsulating the same kind of mania that media instills in people, especially kids from the boons.
Yeah.
How did the writing bit come about?
Well, I mean, I started writing when I was like really young, and my dad pushed me really hard to write when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote a lot of poems and comics, so I would write like rhyming poems.
Mm-hmm.
And my own comics.
People from Nantucket?
No, I mean, hopefully it was a little bit more sophisticated than that, but like, I really liked rhyming and wordplay, and it was always something that I really gravitated towards. So I wrote, and then as I got older, I started writing. My natural interest in media made me want to write about it, and
Mm-hmm.
so I started writing reviews and stuff, and then, you know, along comes anime. I'm a teenager, and, well, here, let's write about this. But, like, that is pretty much where writing as a hobby and as a profession started. Was I just really wanted to write about what I cared about so much. And, you know, in the interim did some fiction and you know, comics and stuff like that. But a lot, like, that side of it, the truly creative stuff, I guess, has always been a side hobby. And, like, I see the writing that I've done is like, well, this is my job, this is my work, is writing about media. And I've largely done. I mean, most of what people can read by me is about media. So, you know, I always considered, like, one of the greatest things in the world is a really good, satisfying discussion about art. And, like, so I made it. I guess I just turned my whole life into that. You know?
Yeah, well, you didn't feel like you were working if you had a great day at work.
Yeah. No, you always feel like you're working. I think, but, like, I find that that's not, like, that's true to a point, but, like, I've been working, like, I turned my hobby into a job so long ago that I don't even think I make those distinctions anymore. It's just like, this is my life. You know?
Yeah, well, pretty much everything you've done for the past decade or so has been internet based, yes?
Yeah, for sure.
Yes. So it's one of those things, like, I'll see, it's now Action Zaku.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, the site got hacked, or targeted rather, by some malicious hackers last year, and they stole and tanked my Twitter account. They did the thing where they just put out a bunch of random threats, and Twitter just bans it and then refuses to give it back to you. Interestingly, the exact same thing happened to a lot of different people, because this is a common tactic on among people who do this sort of thing, is to take over an account, dump out a bunch of threads, get it nuked.
Poison the well.
And then that person has to either beg Twitter to get it back, which they never give it back, especially if there were physical threats of violence, which is the thing they do. Which is the thing that they do. They never give it back to you, so I had to start a new account that is now Action Zac, who I lost pretty much all my followers, so I'm rebuilding from scratch.
Well, I still follow you.
Well, thanks, man.
my
Honestly,
account
like,
that nobody can account that nobody can tell is me.
Yeah, I actually don't really even know which one is you.
Yeah, Evan R. Jones. Who cares?
Oh wait, no, that is you. I feel like I just haven't seen it in a really long time.
I do not post pretty much anything of worth or merit.
Okay.
And it's not poop posting. It's just straight up like random thoughts and this and that.
Maybe
I do not have a picture of me on it.
Oh, that's why.
Actually Googled Evan Jones.
Yeah.
And I found a picture of this like English guy sitting there in a suit and like just the shirt sleeves and an undone tie and a cigarette in one hand and a beer in the other.
Yeah.
And thought to myself, like, that is so awesome that has to be the photo of me.
Yeah, that's good.
And I'll meet people and they're like, wait, because you don't look like you look like some kind of like quasi redneck vampire kid. And it was like I was expecting something else, and it was just like random shots. But no, you were following on the people on the account.
I found it freeing. I had about 10,000 followers beforehand, which is not much, but it is more than I have now. But I had that account since like 2008 or something like that, and I was really once it was gone forever, I found it very freeing, because I never put very much effort into social media to begin with, and the account only had that many followers. It was just like mouse gathering on a rolling stone, right? It had just been around for a long time, and I work in media, so I had to tweet a lot to post, so that's how I got it. It's not like I sat there and was like, all right, what's my Twitter brand strategy?
Yeah.
And I like sat down and planned it out, and like, the way people do when they that's what you have to do. You have to
That was my gig
job
for the longest time.
Yeah, right.
And so when I do stuff like this, it's just completely, here's what I want.
Yeah, right. Yes, which is very freeing.
Yeah, and it's also one of those deals where, like, if you're not feeling it, I'm not trying to be an asshole to you.
Yeah.
I'm just, this is my little garden. Give me that.
Yeah. But I was happy to have the history deleted, so that all that crap that came out of my mouth for 10 years is gone. And I was happy to completely reset it and not have to worry about it and be like, well, I lost the account that I worked on for a really long time, and so there's no way for me to get that back. It's very freeing. It's like, oh, I don't have to care? Right, great, okay. Everyone who approaches me is like, oh, you only have 2,300 followers or whatever. It's like you've been in media.
Checking the phone? We doing this?
You've been working in media for a long time. No, my phone is buzzing.
Oh, no, I was hoping you could actually pull up greatest hits tweets.
Oh, no.
Do your thing.
No. What the heck?
You need to take a minute?
No, just somebody's... I don't even know who this is. Anyway. What was I saying?
Well, I was mentioning the whole Twitter thing, and I'd like to talk about certain aspects of online interaction.
Sure, yeah. I mean, that is a lot of my job.
But I specifically was interested in it because as we're getting out here, where you stream and you do stuff. I'm at a point in my life where when I'm done reading and writing about reading and writing and researching and going through things and taking notes and doing media planning, I can't get far enough away from a computer.
Yeah.
I am fucking D-O-N-E done capital letters.
Yeah.
And so I'll see you like hang out and do streams and stuff. And I was like, how?
Yeah.
It's just like your love is that great, or it's just something you fell into? It's a different.
Well, I think there's a real strong distinction that I made between what's work and what's not on a computer. I have been like the stuff that I stream largely is just old video games, which just doesn't feel particularly connected to my job, even though it sort of is. It doesn't really feel particularly connected. I also do that with a group. There's no expectation that I have to build or keep an audience with it, and I can sit there and do whatever I want, so it's very relaxing.
Yeah.
I don't really associate work with the computer. Work is an open Word document. Work is my email inbox. Work is
traveling to a convention.
My text messages, that's work. Those are the things I don't like to engage with.
Yeah.
When I'm trying to relax. I try not to look at the site, even though like every computer I've ever really owned for the last 20 years has had a browser window open to Anime News Network. All of the time. There's like every device I have, everything has ANN open on it somewhere at all times.
Yeah.
And it has been that way forever. But I just don't look at that window when I'm not working. And that's just, I guess that's just how I've compartmentalized it. I'm really, now that you've made me think about it, I'm really glad that I've been able to make those distinctions, because my husband is very much the same way as me and does nothing but consume media in his spare time. And that's what he does. That's what he does for fun. And if you were to, I think, associate, like, well, I don't want to sit in front of a TV anymore because I need to relax now, I think that would be crippling.
It's
but
a slow
I
slide into hating what you do.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, frankly, like in my spare time, like especially in the last couple of years, I mean, I do a tremendous amount of reading, and now I go to the gym a lot. I didn't do that for 35 years, but now I do. So, my things have gotten a lot more varied, especially as I've come out of like depression and things like that. They've gotten a lot more varied.
Yeah.
But I think there's an important distinction you have to make. And that's down to the person, is being able to compartmentalize, like, okay, this is, especially when you do, like I do, you work from home.
Yeah.
So it's the same computer for everything. It's the same one for everything.
You're paying bills,
Yeah.
you're talking to mom and dad, you're getting your plane ticket home for the
No
holidays.
on the mom and dad, but paying bills, yeah.
I don't want to sound condescending by saying aw, but I do feel like saying aw.
It's all right.
I think I understand.
Yeah.
I'm dumbfounded.
But yeah, like I use the same thing for everything. My home is my workspace, and the two have been combined for so long that I just don't. I think I don't really think about it anymore.
You've kind of mentally managed to draw boundaries,
Yes.
as well as understanding the importance of some kind of physical understanding of those boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right.
Do you have a separate space for?
So I have an office. I work out in a gym, so I don't work out in my apartment. And I try to get out of the house at least. I try to go at least once a day, but I also will try to take pretty much any opportunity to get out that comes up.
Yeah.
And that's not out of like desperation. Oh, I have to get out of here. It's just a mental health thing. And I find if you stay on top of it and you don't let yourself sit in your apartment all day, like even like, I don't go to a coffee shop to work because that seems like
it's hard and noisy, and there are coffee shops I love, specifically where I used to live where you live.
Yeah, right.
But it's also, that is just kind of, let's introduce fire.
Yeah.
And juggle that around.
It's just so distracting. Like, I got to worry about the laptop battery. I got to bring a mouse with me because I don't like using touchpad.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a hassle.
Yeah.
I don't hate my apartment so much that I have to get out. Like, if I'm I'll go see a movie, or I'll go to a theme park for the afternoon, or I'll, whatever. I'll figure something out if I really feel like getting out of the house. But I don't have a lot of Sturm und Drang over it. I don't worry myself about that stuff, I guess. And I think that's maybe just I tend to be a very practical person, and it's very impractical for me to have all this psychological trauma over living and working in the same place, and like constantly worrying about like, well, I spent too much time here doing this, now I need to spend time over here doing that. Like, I don't have space in my life for worrying about that shit, so I just don't. Like, which sounds simple, but I think it's a survival tactic.
That, honestly, I think that's a realization of something, or comes about with a realization of something. I was so crippled, and if you want to talk depression and anxiety, I will full on do it. I don't know how far you want to get into it, but I'm fascinated
I
with
write
it.
about it, so we can talk about
No,
it.
you've done some fascinatingly profound thoughts on that, but I came through a series of traumatic, weird things in the past 5 years.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
I've been working.
Whenever you talk about your life, it's always like, what happened to you? Like, it's always like, what are you dealing with?
Well, the thing is, I had a long period of being bewildered by whatever circumstance I found myself in. And speaking of survival strategies and coping strategies, basically it got real dark and real weird about 3.5 years ago.
Okay.
And I think a lot of it was on the basis of some flat-out manipulation and lies.
You're dealing with toxic people?
Dealing with toxic people, dealing with toxic working situations.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Understanding things as falling into patterns and patterns that are established long ago in my life that other people would play upon, and also understanding how I would go into those patterns. And it was a real moment of like, hey, you can't undo what happened, and also this is happening now. How can you, number one, get to safe? And we're talking literal existential safety. Like, what is threatening right now?
Yeah.
I moved out of my old apartment at 3 a.m. because
Holy cow.
my former friend, his girlfriend, who was our roommate, decided, I'm going to scream at this guy, slam a door in his face, and just sneered him. And I was like, I'm going to end up, this is actually...
You didn't feel safe.
Oh, absolutely felt like this is going to go there. I mean, I'm not a big person. I weigh 153 pounds. And I'm pretty accommodating, but I felt something in the back of my head goes, nope, this is real. They're doing it because they're thinking it, and that's the next thing. But it was one of those deals where I had a realization of, okay, you can't turn back the clock on it, and it hurts, and I know there's things that I wish I could change. All I can do is kind of prevent myself from falling into those situations. And a lot of that also was kind of thinking to myself, when you deal with anxiety and depression and upset, a part of me appreciated the solidity of depression and how I felt. I'm in the bed.
Yeah.
And I'm staying in the bed. At least I know, like, this is how things will be. Like, if I don't play the game, I don't run the risk of losing the game, even though I'm in this bad place.
Yeah.
And trying to crawl out of it and having something bad happen again, and trying to crawl out of it and having something happen again. But there are things happening in a certain place in my life that were so drastically fucked up. I'm not trying to be elliptical about it, but all kinds of things had happened. Several layoffs in a row. I'd get a great job, and 6 months, 7 months later, it would be gone. And there's 5 people getting laid off, and I'm one of them. And then something else would happen, or there's a lot of fast friends in Los Angeles had been a thing. That's no longer a thing for me because I had a whole bunch of friend divorces, and then just being terrified about being broke and not working. When I'm a total workaholic, and oddly enough, by these circumstances coming about, that all stopped. But it turned into something where my biggest thing was I'm waking up at 8, I'm functioning, and I'm going to bed at 9, and then I'm gonna try and do it again.
Yeah.
And no matter what happens in the day, I'm gonna keep doing this.
There you go.
And what happened was life got really small. I was focused on that day.
Yeah.
But you get to the point where you stop caring to a certain degree and everything felt numb.
Yeah.
And when it got so to where I don't feel anything about anything and I'm not communicating about it well and this is getting fucking scary. Maybe it's time to kind of get in front of this. That's when I started saying, okay, well, how do I literally went back to the drawing board. How do you deal with depression? How do you deal with anxiety? How do you deal with this? And
the answer is you manage it.
Yeah. And you also have to accept that, like anything you do, I'll write 5 things and I'll hate 4 of them and I'll think one of them will be okay.
But you wrote them.
Yeah. And the okay
one, which is literally the only thing that matters.
Yeah. And when you take that same approach to okay, well, I'm feeling bummed out. How can I let me look at the physical, let me look at the mental, let me look at the situations that surround me. And I found a lot of it was really, it's hard to tell. It's not advice. I can't give advice for everybody. Give advice to me, but contextual situations, where you are, where you be. If you're in a place where everybody's horrible to you all the time, and you're internalizing it, and you're being horrible to yourself, and you're putting it back out there because at least you can control that horribleness on your own terms.
Yeah.
Get the fuck out.
Yeah.
Do whatever you have to do. Sleep in your car. Talk to your friends and say, can I crash on your couch while I earn money to literally get away from this?
Yeah.
Search for jobs constantly. Go into DEFCON 5 mode. And I found once I handled all of that stuff, which took months and months and months, I could start thinking about, okay, what am I going to do next week? What am I going to do after that? But, oh, man, this being under siege is one of the worst places to be because you stop caring about everything that's not right now or everything that's not horrible to you. And
it's interesting.
Oh, yeah. So just kind of putting things in a place where you can analyze it without getting overwhelmed and rebuilding any form of comfort zone is so difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. That's tough. Yeah, that's really good advice, especially if you have a lot of external pressure. A lot of I certainly didn't really have that. That's not really what I was dealing with. I wasn't dealing with forces external to me. I was dealing with very much internal problems. And so my approach to all of that stuff is very much about the self and doing really, really, really just ripping yourself apart with your bare hands. And that's the only way you find out what's really in there. And that's when you can start figuring out kind of who you are and what your brain tells you, like what your anxiety tells you, what your depression tells you about yourself versus what maybe the truth is, and so like you're talking about it, like getting out of these terrible external situations where you have a lot of pressure from, like you're feeling like toxic people, toxic situations, getting away from those and then doing the work on yourself and doing that first. Understanding
how these habits are coming, I'm manifesting certain habits that come out of that. Like, wow, I stress drank for 3 hours last night alone because I didn't want to walk outside and talk to my neighbor who, glared at me once because I asked him to turn their radio down.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually a very familiar situation to me.
It happened. But it was something where it was kind of a stew of it, and it's really tough to look inward and realize you need to change and if you're in that bad space, like just not grabbing, like hoping you grab your insides and tear them out.
Yeah.
Like I kind of made the decision at some point, I'm going to stop hating myself.
Yeah. That's a tough one.
And it's the worst thing too, because I talk to people who I can tell like they're fighting with depression, because I've told depression humor. I have a deep appreciation for people who've been through that. Justin, I spoke with yesterday in a long discussion in relation to this. We've both agreed. You mentioned End of Evangelion, which is fantastic. For all the non-weebs out there, sorry, but you're going to need to watch Evangelion regardless. He had said, if you don't understand depression, that shit's never going to make sense to you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most right-on application of it. But kind of understanding that, well, it's yours to deal with, and not in a way of, suck it up, pussy.
No, that's not it. But it is on you. You have to manage it.
Yeah.
As it is said in Evangelion, the only person who will take care of you is you. You have to take care of yourself. And that's really profound. That's true. It's simple, but that's very true. And no one's gonna come along and take care of you and make everything okay for you. And like Evangelion is like very much about that. For most of its runtime. The third movie, that Evangelion 3.33, is almost entirely about that. That's a good point.
Well, I think what's really sad about it, and you had to learn with the grandiosity of it, of the feeling of, wow, maybe my parents weren't up to that, maybe the schools weren't up to that, maybe the place I work weren't up to that, and I'm in this place where all the societal systems where I thought I would be in place have kind of fallen away. And this is very much post-2008 economic thinking, too.
Yeah.
What's going to do it? And you realize, well, it ultimately is up to me, and anybody that doesn't appreciate who I am and the relationship I'm trying to have with them, or the relationship I'm trying to have with the organization or the institution they're part of, I got to move away from that. And that's a hard realization, because you kind of feel like, wow, I got duped, or you can feel victimized, or you can be very self-pitying.
Yeah.
And it's tough, and it's also the realization that with a lot of cases, and I found a lot of people who are creative have a hard time being nice to themselves, because oftentimes they're thinking, if I'm nice to myself, I'm immediately being shitty to somebody else, which is a false dichotomy that I really hope people can dispel and move away from.
Or that it's ego.
Yeah.
If you're being nice to yourself, it's just narcissism, which is something that like was instilled in me at a young age. To care about oneself is narcissism, which is it's fucked up. It really fucks you up.
Hey, how you doing? That guy's awesome.
All right.
Yeah, good dude.
That was instilled in me at a young age, which is even caring about your appearance is narcissism. And that sets you on this really bizarre kind of worldview where confidence is interpreted as arrogance in all cases. And that's something I feel like I'm still dealing with. I still, like anything, you know, I'm an anxious and depressed person, and that doesn't go away. You can't cure it. But it's your responsibility to manage it and to not make it everyone else's problem all the time, you know?
But depression gets comfy.
Yeah, but depression gets very comfortable. And I was very comfortable in depression for like a decade, I would say. Very comfortable there. It's safe, it's easy, and like I had a steady job where my depression did not impact anything about it. So I could just sit in my apartment and collect a paycheck, and so long as I did my job, which was get up, sit at the computer, and manage these writers, everything was going to be okay. So I could just stay there.
Yeah.
I could just stay there in the bed and hate myself and live, sort of. I mean, it wasn't living, but I could do that. And like it's almost it was a dangerous situation.
Yeah. It's not.
You don't have any real motive. Like you had motivation, external motivation to kick yourself in the ass and like find another job. I was always in this very stable environment.
Yeah.
And like my personal problems never really impacted my work to the point where it negatively impacted what I was doing. Like I was still able to do my job completely. So that part of it was always safe and fine. And that enabled my depression because I never had anything to kick me in the ass ever. If I had gotten shit canned as a result of my behavior or my actions or depression or anything, it probably would have been a little differently. You know, I might have come to these conclusions sooner, like you apparently did. But being in that safe, comfortable, at-home situation, like I genuinely really feel for people who are depressive or anxious and have to work from home and maybe don't have a family or you know, a regular partner or anything, because it's a very lonely life, and it is really easy if you're already depressed
to stay there,
to just sit there, to just stay in that depression. And working from home very much adds to it. So those healthy boundaries we were talking about earlier, it's sort of where those come into play, I think.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's such a challenge, especially when you deal with people having anxiety-based stuff. I have a lot of hobbies that I'm into that are very singular. Like, I can't get together with 10 other people and read a book at the same time. Or, you know, I can form a running group and things like that. That makes some sense. But it's also something where I only want to engage people when I was at my best. And when you're locked into that depression thing, you never feel like you're at the best.
No, I neglected and ruined like a lot of friendships during that period.
Yeah.
I neglected them. I still do it. Like I'm still very much in the mindset where like, oh, I'm gonna like I don't want to bother anybody. I don't want to bother anyone with my bullshit depression or anxiety.
If I could set off fireworks right now, that said same deal.
Yeah. I don't want to bother anybody, and that's narcissism. That is, and what this is a big thing for me is realizing that a lot of those thought processes are very self-serving melodrama. Oh, I'm the worst. Oh, everyone hates me. No, they just want you to come.
Yeah.
They just want you to show up and not be grumpy or isolated. They want you to show up and be their friend, the guy that they remember. And that's the only expectation that's being put on you. And everyone's not sitting around talking about how horrible you are.
Yeah.
And that's a self-serving fantasy that aids your depression and anxiety. And it's something that, when I say rip yourself apart, like I mean it. I mean, you got to go in and be ready to face some pretty hard truths about yourself, who you are, where these attitudes you have came from. And it's important to drag yourself through the gravel and figure out where all this self-hatred is coming from, because a lot of it, especially if you really sit down and think about it, when I finally fully came to the realization of like where all of this stuff comes from, I felt like a spoiled child for years.
Yeah.
Like a baby who just couldn't handle that the world was not giving him what he felt he was owed, you know. And that's a really hard thing to come to.
Yeah, I've been operating this way, thinking this thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
woe is me, I'm so depressed and anxious.
Yeah.
And you realize like these systems that you're giving into, it really is. It feels like, oh, I don't have an ego. I'm not a narcissist. I fucking hate myself.
Everybody else is fucked up.
Yeah, I fucking hate myself. That's not narcissism. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. To assign yourself those kind of extreme attributes, and then and then propose that all the other people in your life must be aware of this, must be thinking about it while you're thinking about it, must also think you're the worst thing in the world, must notice all these things. That is all ego. That is all narcissism. And if you take people at face value, friends and people who love you at face value, and you stop second-guessing that stuff, and you rip yourself down, you say, like, this self-image that I've created for myself is reflective almost entirely just of my anxiety and depression. It does not reflect me, who I really am. I have built an idol to my own failure. I've built an idol to my self-image as a depressed and anxious person.
Yeah.
And I sit and worship at the feet of this thing, and that's all I do. That's all I do with my life. And you have to burn it down. You have to burn the self-image down.
One thing that I should mention, come through the other side of it, and I've had discussions with people, and I get into it, and I look in their eyes, and I realize, I'll have to say to them, you understand you are going to have to start searching for real help from somebody that is qualified to help you.
Yeah.
And it's going to be hard, and also, it may not work out at first.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with, like, I've got to get up, go through the day, and go to bed again. You're going to have to keep gunning at it.
Yeah.
It's going to be baby steps after a while, and then hopefully if you found somebody to work with in any capacity whatsoever, you know, and do the research on it and spend the time with it and be nice to yourself and just kind of move forward trying to get out of, like, the comfiness of hating yourself and the comfiness of depression. You may have a breakthrough, and on the other side of the breakthrough is the confusion you will feel when you're not bummed all the time.
Yeah.
Which, for me...
Or the confusion you feel when you realize you're not totally happy.
Yeah.
And it's not this... Like, you'll have euphoria when you come out on the other side of self-hatred. I'm sure you felt that. Those euphoric moments where the clouds part.
Yeah.
And you realize you're coming out of the woods. And that's really exciting. But then on the other, you stabilize eventually.
Yeah.
And you realize, like, oh, no, I am an anxious and depressed person. I will be managing this for the rest. But now I understand it as a problem to be managed.
Yeah.
Rather than this big evil force that dominates my life and I can't do anything about it. Now I understand it as something I have a responsibility to myself and the people that I love to manage this, because I'm fucking worthless to them without it.
Yeah.
If I don't manage this, I turn my anxiety into their problem. That is where I find, like, a lot of the conversations, some of the conversations that I have to get a little uncomfortable, because you really are. I held myself responsible for my own actions and my own behavior and my own thought processes and the wreck that I allowed myself to turn into. I hold myself responsible for that.
Yeah.
Nobody else. It's not anybody else's problem. Look, I have a terrible relationship with my parents. Like, you know, I was horribly abused as a child, and then my father had maintained the emotional abuse up through throughout my adult life. And I've gone through a tremendous amount of shit. The self-hatred and anxiety, the systems that I built, the behavior as a result of that is my fault.
Mm-hmm.
That is me doing that to myself and accepting that and saying it's nobody else's fault. It's just me. It's hard, but you're burning yourself down and coming back up.
I feel weird. I feel weird using the term fault.
Yeah, you're right. Fault,
Maybe the closest
it
thing
sounded
we could...
weird when it came out of my mouth. Like, I didn't really like it. I don't really like to use the word fault. That's my it's my responsibility.
Yeah, I'm not trying to grammar Nazi you
no,
on that
I get
one.
what you're saying.
Because I go the same way. Like, somebody, well, whose fault is that? I had a boss who said that. I'm like, yeah, when I think about faults and personal shortcomings, I don't really think about the fact that you put an extra cookie in this place's order.
Yeah,
it's not really a fault issue.
Yeah.
A fault issue is if I go home and hit my girlfriend in the mouth.
Yeah. That's
that's
would be a bad. Yeah, would be a fault. Yeah.
But yeah, I told and.
But yeah, no, I totally see what you're saying. It's not necessarily about assigning, like, feel bad, assign blame. It's just just open your eyes, recognize what the problem is, and deal with it, and be honest with yourself about what the problem really was. Yeah. Now, I can sit here and say, like, oh yeah, no, I was a narcissistic, self-hating fucking wreck for wasted, just wadded up 10 years of his life, threw him in the garbage. I lived through it. I'm here now. I took care of it eventually. Yeah. Like, I got my shit together eventually.
And I saw you doing cool shit that whole time period. Like, well before we had met. I was like, oh, that's cool. I'm following up on that. And I'm reading whatever and this and that. And I would catch you at events, and I'm trying to remember who introduced us, and it was very fleeting stuff. And then we were on a panel at ALA one year. It was really cool talking with you.
Right? Yeah. I remember that.
And some other stuff, but it was always like, oh, that guy's doing cool shit and doing his thing. But it is one of those deals of, yeah, it may not be on display to everybody else, but you feel it's on display, or you're just trying to work through it, and every day is tough. But on the other side of that, it's weird because I feared a depression jag after kind of fighting through a bunch of things.
Yeah.
Because I'm still not a terrifically happy person.
Yeah, me neither.
I'm still not, but I have a lot of appreciation for negative thought, negative humor.
Yeah,
I have
too.
total depression humor. I think it's fucking hilarious. I've watched 1,000 people cringe when I've laughed at things.
Yeah, you need to find the audience for that stuff. When you find the audience for it, it's really good.
Oh, you're going deep.
It's really good when you find like the people you can get deep dark with. Because like people who go through depression and are also rational about it and practical about it and like are working on it or have a sense of humor about it. I love talking to those people. Those are my people, I feel, because I'm one of them. And like you and I probably both, people would just say like, oh, you're a pessimist or you're negative. And it's like, I don't see it that way.
I'm still fucking trying. I'm still out here throwing punches.
Well,
I'm still going at it.
I don't really see it that way. Like negative emotions and thoughts and feelings and everything are part of the human experience. And the idea that you're supposed to shut them out all the time or you're a bad person, or if you talk about negative things, it makes you bad, or if like you're bringing everyone down. Like there's negative emotions and experiences are part of our life just as much as everything else, and I think an appreciation for them and a sense of humor about them is like crucial for survival.
Yeah.
And as a result, I feel as though maybe I've been a bit of a contrarian in embracing that side of it and saying like, no, I want to talk about the void. I fucking love the void. Let's talk about the void. And people get upset when you talk about the void. But when you like talking about that stuff and you're not afraid to confront it or anything, it freaks some people out. So it's good to find the right audience for that kind of thing. But when you find it, it's glorious because then you can. It feels like everyone's being real with each other, and that's the best. That's what I want. Like that's the conversation I want, is when people feel like they're being real with each other.
I feared the first big depression jag. I went about 10 months without one. And I feared it so much that I was just like, holy shit, I'm going to fall into a depression.
You were anxious about falling into a depression?
Oh, yeah. I was waiting for the earth to open up and swallow me.
So so you're not depressed, but you're having an anxiety attack about it.
Not an anxiety attack. I was just like, hey, that wave's going to come in.
That's anxiety. You're living with that day to day. You're telling yourself, like, any day now.
Fear of unknown.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually, this fear of something that may manifest itself whatever way. I was in such fear of that happening that I didn't realize you've built up a toolkit for it, and that's part of what what a process of self-discovery is, and you built up something for it to handle it. I'm a planner. I'm pragmatic. I'm on top of things. I make lists. I have reminders for reminders on my phone. I'm trying to do less and less and do it better and better. Mm-hmm. But when that feeling of, oh my God, everything's awful came in, within 15 minutes of it, it was, this is not that bad. Here's how we can work through it. Don't make any drastic decisions. Get at some of your friends. Say, hey, this is how I'm feeling.
Yeah, that's healthy. That's really good.
And I was like, holy shit, awesome. I was so proud of like actually moving through that first thing after just years of being so in the dumps and like, oh, I'm out of it. It feels great. And then like realizing, okay, well, things are at a certain place. Like there's going to be peaks and valleys.
Yeah, definitely. Like that's the weird thing is before the negativity and the anxiety and depression were so constant that I was never out of it. And when like the euphoria we were talking about, that's when you kind of crest the clouds, I guess, for the first time, when you finally break your head through. After that, then I started experiencing highs and lows, which I did not experience before. It was just
all
a
the fucking
constant
same.
low, right? A constant low. Now, if something triggers an anxiety spell or a self-hatred spell,
it's righteous. It's real.
It is. You feel the spiral. You feel yourself going down, and then I'm on the couch staring at the ceiling, thinking about death, and it's like, oh, I'm back here again, and you feel yourself going down into it, which is very helpful. Because in the past, you didn't even know you were down there. But now you know you're going down and that you have to climb back out.
Yeah.
And that is a huge difference because your eyes are at least open about it. And that's what I mean by managing it, is now I get to manage that. It's a lot less painful and destructive and difficult because I know that I have to manage it. And like you try and build your new behaviors around that expectation that you're going to have to manage your anxiety and depression. And that's, that, you know, it took me a long time to come to those conclusions.
Well, my appreciation of a lot of things that we were discussing earlier has only increased. Like my appreciation for art and culture and music and history and reading. It's amazing. It felt like food had flavor again.
Yes, yeah.
And all of a sudden my appreciation of it became more nuanced, and I was more articulate, I was more articulate in my discussion of it. And of course I realized I stumbled over articulate. But things felt, there was a sense of perspective on them that was a whole lot more rounded, and I saw these other angles and these other viewpoints, and it was so exciting to me to just kind of look at the world through new eyes in a sense. And it sounds like such a cliche, but it was true.
It's true.
And it worked for both good and bad. Like, if something sucked, I had points about why it sucked that were argued through and reasoned through. And it wasn't just, well, the logical fallacy of A is not C and therefore it is bad. It was really, I've taken the time to analyze this, and that's kind of where I am now, and it's been really beneficial. And I think that's true for a lot of people, especially writers. They'll have a heart, they'll kind of get up to a certain point, and they'll have that, and then they'll go back down, and they know they're capable of that.
Yeah.
And it's a tough thing because you're living in your head, and a lot of people, the work from home thing, blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
I have always tried to have the good boundaries on it. I love where I live now. It's a great place. I have access to an office at school, and I do a lot of my work there, and I do a lot of my work in the library because I don't want to hate where I am and where I live because the grayness kind of sets and settles there. But when you kind of break through a certain level and you get to stay there, like, you know, the fruit is ripe, so to speak.
Yeah.
You can enjoy things. Like, I'll go to a movie that's like, I'm not in love with this, but I got to enjoy it what it was for an hour and a half, whereas before I just go like, when the fuck is this thing over?
Yeah.
So I can go complain about it.
Yeah. Yeah, you start engaging with things a little differently. It's not so much like I'm waiting to complain about this thing, but you're just not a miserable fuck anymore.
Yeah.
And like you can tell when somebody's complaining about something because they're a miserable fuck, and like it sounds a certain way. It comes out of their mouth in a certain way. Their arguments aren't necessarily backed up by you were saying, oh, I've really thought about this and I care a lot, so that's why I'm sharing it. It's just I'm bitching about this because I'm miserable.
Yeah.
And I kind of, part of me really hates to say that because when you're a critic, and I've been one for a very long time, you get real allergic to people trying to dismiss your opinion for any reason. And for a long time, I heard that. Like, you just care about this because you just think this sucks because you're miserable. Well, they were right in some cases. In a lot of cases, I would say they were right. Now, my criticism is a lot better because I'm not a miserable wreck anymore.
Your baseline is different.
Yeah. Well, I can see colors. Like I can taste food.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll run with that one.
Yeah.
I'm starting to get hungry. But there's a difference between criticism, critique, and contempt.
Yes.
And sometimes when you find yourself stuck in contempt mode, especially when it's comforting, try breaking out of that one.
Yeah, right.
And actually, to bring this back to the gig, when you're working with writers and you're working with people, do you have something where you can say, like, you're kind of stuck in one gear there? Can you spot this in other people now?
Yeah, no, actually, I just went through this with somebody. I won't name any names or anything. I'll try and be as non-specific as possible. But I had one writer who was turning in a lot of work that was... he had a very specific set of tastes that I recognized immediately as a certain type of fan. Well, I only like things that are this one way. And I had hired him to do a lot of different, cover a lot of different types of material. And he would only turn in positive reviews for this one type of show, this one type of thing. So I had to go to him and say, hey, I think maybe your horizons are a little limited. We don't need another one of these kind of people where the only thing you like is this one kind of thing. I was like, if you want to write about media for a living, especially now in this day and age when, That field has changed a lot, and there's a tremendous amount of competition for even any freelance gig. It's going to be a lot of competition. Any paid gig writing about media.
Oh, I know.
You need to have fairly broad horizons. You need to be able to write competently and passionately about, well, maybe not passionately, but you need to be able to write convincingly about pretty much anything. And if you're basically dismissive of everything except your one or two things, I guess in that point, I'm not sure why you would get into writing about media. In that case, just start a blog specifically about the thing you like.
Make a zine.
Yeah, something like, yeah, sure, that's really, like, make a zine. That's cool. I'll read your zine. Like, if you make a zine and print it, I will read it for sure. Because that's fascinating to me.
I'm back in. Like, all the stuff I was into, a lot of things that, I don't know if you've had this. I think this has happened. Not to get off that topic. I wonder if a lot of people feel a sense of displacement about. We're around the same age. A lot of things we liked, people were like, "What the hell do you like that for?" Now it's like, okay, you know, there you are. That's. I can go see that thing that you were always talking about in a film theater for weeks on end, or you know, that's now on Adult Swim, or I can buy that record, or the vinyl that.
Yeah, almost
is
nothing
back in the
is
shop.
obscure anymore.
What the fuck happened?
Yeah, well, nerd culture kind of took over, and I think
and it's expensive now.
Well, I think that's because nerd culture dovetails with capitalism like perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
It is nerd culture is just consumerism, right? So that dovetails with the needs of a capitalist society like ours very, very well, and so they saw the dollar signs and. Now that's what we have. Everything that you and I loved as kids is now literally like in every gas station. You can find all of it now, and very, very few things are rare or weird or obscure or tucked away in a corner like that. That stuff. Like now, I find myself chasing after those weird things in the corners that people haven't heard of. It's so fun and exciting. Like you find an old movie or something just like no one's heard of it.
That's all my Twitter feed is like, this is really nobody will care about this. There you go. Or that's all, you know, my best interactions online with people are basically, here's this, like, I have a Flipper bootleg from 1981 from San Francisco.
That's really cool.
Like that kind of stuff. That's awesome. Fun. And now it's actually, because it's media based, it's accessible. Or I also I enjoy kind of following weird trends. Like I loved following vaporwave as a trend.
Oh yeah.
Like I thought that was such a fun thing. And then but I also aware of I was around for that, and a lot of it was a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
So you literally are inventing some of the emotions there. But it's fun, but it's also, it gives it a different appreciation. Well, we've been going for a minute, and it is getting dark and cold outside, and I was hoping we could see like a rocket ship streak across the sky like it did a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. Everybody freaked out, but I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come out. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, sure. It was an interesting discussion.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Where can we find you online?
My Twitter feed is ActionZaku, ZACKU, or at AnimeNewsNetwork.com. I write about anxiety and depression at ZacBertschy.com.
All right.
So you can find all that.
Well, thanks again. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, sure thing, man.
Take care, Zach.
All right.
Yeah, set the timer for 30 minutes of media nerd rage.
Yeah, sure, if you want.
Yeah, why not?
That's cool with me.
And we're off, yeah. So, 2017, what scratched your itch?
Oh, geez, man, it was an amazing year for movies. Like, haven't had one like it, I think, in 10 years. I think the last one we had like this was 2007, where there were just incredible movies, one after the other.
Yeah, No Country for Old Men.
There Will Be Blood.
Yeah.
My favorite movie of all time, period, ever. There Will Be Blood.
Did I tell you I think I saw No Country for Old Men right after my friend's mother was killed?
No, you didn't tell me that. That's not a good time to see that movie.
Can't get out of my head.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It was just like, well, you know, murder and that happens.
Yeah,
and
right.
It was just something to where, like, even just thinking about it, I finished watching it. I remember that night I got up, I turned off the projector, and I walked to the next room, and I turned off the bathroom light.
Yeah.
And I went to sleep.
Yeah, right.
And to this day, I remember just the, 15, 20 steps up and out in that room, and just the blackness that happened after it. And it is one of those things, there's an amazing movie, but it really is like, oh God. But yeah, this year I definitely felt different ways about things.
Yeah, right.
but it was that's a real benchmark here. It's a high order.
Yeah. I'd say so. Well, and it's an interesting capstone to it, too, because, like I said, my favorite movie of ever is There Will Be Blood. Paul Thomas Anderson and Daniel Day-Lewis. Mm-hmm. This year, 10 years to the day, on Christmas, they released Phantom Thread. Also, Paul Thomas Anderson and Daniel Day-Lewis. Also, my favorite movie of 2017. Incredible film.
Literally.
Everybody has to see it.
Have not heard of it till you mentioned it on Twitter.
Yeah.
I have been...
unbelievable. I mean, it is believable, but it's just... I loved that movie. It is unlike... It's about love. It is unlike any movie you've ever seen about love. Like, you will really dig it, I think. I think you would really dig it. It is totally surprising in, like, the best possible kind of way. And it is, as a filmmaking exercise, it's gorgeous and controlled like a clenched fist.
Yeah.
The control the entire way through that movie, the editing is just flawless. And he is getting these performances. Like, PTA... I think our greatest working director has done most of his best work in the last... Well, no, that's not true. I think you ask most people, they probably tell you that they really love, like, Magnolia, or a lot of people probably will say Boogie Nights, which I think is probably his second, maybe third best movie. But he made a flat-out masterpiece in There Will Be Blood, and Phantom Thread is another masterpiece. Not on that same level, but that's a personal bias speaking. Like, I think There Will Be Blood is the best movie ever made about America and, like, the West, you know? So that's a high bar to reach. But Phantom Thread, as a film about love, is so special and so good and so perfectly observed and so... Yeah, I just loved it. I think everyone should... should see it.
I like how, as this stopped, I realized I don't know where the lights are here, so we're recording in the dark, and it actually made it better for me. Yeah. I don't know if it's...
It's a little easier. It's like talking on the phone.
Hey, so I saw this movie, Phantom Thread.
Yeah, it's really good. But, like, that's the best movie I saw this year, and then Lady Bird was outstanding.
Really enjoyed it.
Yeah. So that movie was, like, turbo real. Like, just, I felt so seen by the characters in that movie.
Yeah, I tried not to listen to much hype and this and that, whatever, but I kept seeing it, kept trying to go see it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, but I wouldn't read up on it.
Yeah.
When I decided I'm going to go see something regardless, that's my decision. I'm going to go see something regardless.
I don't do hardly any reading.
Yeah.
I just go. Like, you tell me the director, you tell me the lead, I'll go. That's it. Premise, maybe, but I will be there, especially if it's... I watched the fucking Beguiling because I love Sofia Coppola because I really love Marie Antoinette and that terrible movie she made Somewhere. I will watch her movies still. She made The Bling Ring, which was horrible, and The Beguiling, which was terrible. But I will watch her next movie because I love an auteur.
Yeah, I really liked Lady Bird. It let me into the flip side of kind of a way of thinking that, I mean, it may not be an authentic experience because it's a portrayed experience, but it let me think about the other side of the adolescent wall.
Yeah.
Being me, it was really useful for that. And also certain things I saw happening in it that were really interesting. Like we talked about, as I called them jokingly, sorry people, Los Angeles friends. Mm-hmm. How she moved from one friend group to another, and you could see how uncomfortable it was and how like hollow it felt for her, and just like certain things that you have to see done. It's not an action; it's the expression of just situational ennui or whatever that I thought was so good. And she's fucking fantastic. And there's not a lot of bad acting anywhere.
No, of course not.
In that thing,
specifically like Laurie Metcalf. That the mom character in that movie is portrayed so note perfect. Like that kind of passive aggression is extremely familiar to me. Like my mom was pretty much exactly like that. And I saw a bit of myself, unfortunately, in that character, and was like, oh, I feel very seen right now. I need to take a step back and,
Well, if your mom got that abortion,
feeling seen, what?
Well, if your mom had gotten that abortion, we wouldn't be here right now.
You're right.
I just felt my jaw hit the floor and go like, yeah, that was you. Kind of still is you.
Yeah. Yeah, that movie is super real.
Yeah.
Call Me by Your Name. Very, 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 very good. Beautiful, like gorgeous. One of the best looking just from a cinematography angle. The only thing that's weird about it. So this is a movie that's about a
Army Hammer's dancing.
summer romance. Well, it's about a summer romance between Armie Hammer and Timothée Chalamet, who is this sort of up and coming actor who I guess is a front runner for Best Supporting Actor this year. He's a good actor. He was also in Lady Bird. He played the. I love this shot in Lady Bird. My favorite shot in Lady Bird. There's a million really good shots in Lady Bird, but the establishing shot of I can't remember the kid's name. But he's sitting there smoking a cigarette, reading Howard Zinn at a table, and you're like, I know that fucking guy.
Well, to be fair, he's in the earlier shot as the bass player of the band at the coffee shop.
Yeah, right. But there's this shot. You're getting to know him in that shot where
Yeah.
he's sitting there with fucking Howard Zinn.
What a show
made
that
me
character was.
laugh out loud, like so good. But he plays the love interest in Call Me by Your Name. The only thing that's weird about Call Me by Your Name, which is about this romance between a grad. It's supposed to be about a grad student and someone who's about to enter college.
Yeah.
Right. Not that big an age difference, maybe 6 years. Inappropriate because he's in his early 20s and he's still technically a teenager, 17, 18.
Mm-hmm.
But that kind of relationship happens often, right? The way they cast it so that Armie Hammer is playing a 24-year-old, which first, he's not 24.
He's 35, right?
He's older than that, I think. And he looks it. He looks like I would peg him at the earliest 34.
Also, grad students don't really look like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, some of them might, but
As I shrivel into a vampire.
yeah,
across
right. You're right.
Kierkegaard.
Clutch your coffee mug and
Heidegger.
yeah, in the back of the coffee shop.
Gave myself a fucking cramp doing that joke.
With
Don't
a-
feel bad.
You need a clove cigarette. Yeah.
Ow.
But it's a gorgeous movie. That's just kind of a weird disconnect because the way the movie plays, it's like, oh, this is a considerably older man getting involved with a considerably younger man, but he's supposed to be 24. So that doesn't stop it from being one of the most gorgeous fucking things I've ever laid eyes on. But it is a little strange. But the performances and the dialogue, it is just a really beautiful movie. And then after that, Star Wars, weirdly. Easily one of the best movies of the year. I loved it. I've seen it 3 times.
Wow.
Yeah. I thought it was I loved The Force Awakens. I thought it was really good. Really fun. Gave me what I wanted. New characters to care about. I really and I liked the fact that I'm not just staring at white guys all day. I get a more interesting cast, more varied.
Yeah,
I cared about those
Love
characters.
Ray, love Finn.
Yeah. Those guys are great, and who doesn't love Oscar Isaac, right? Like, and who doesn't love Adam Driver? Like, what a cast!
God, he's fucking killing in that thing.
Yeah, I was a huge fan of Adam Driver in the show Girls, and me and my husband both love him to pieces. So these movies are just catnip. Yeah, these movies are just catnip for us. But The Last Jedi really took everything about Star Wars and just turned it around. Like, I cannot believe thematically, that movie rearranges Star Wars from being about I to being about we. That is fucking astonishing that they let him do that. The stuff that he gets away with in that movie thematically is bug nuts, crazy, exciting, and I can't wait to see the next one. Although I'm it's J.J. Abrams next time, and you know.
Well, I feel weird about it because I had the same reaction that I had with Rogue One.
Oh, really? I didn't like Rogue One.
I enjoyed it for what it was. I walked out of the theater. I didn't really think much else about it.
No. That's the way I was.
So with The Last Jedi, I also am still concerned about... I'm still confused about the nature of the universe's setup. I love Star Wars so much as a kid growing up, but I've gone a little soft on the fine details of the universe, so I'm still a little confused about a lot of that world. I mostly just kind of felt bored by the second act.
Yeah.
Not bored by it, but bored in certain aspects of it. Had me going, oh, okay, what? I get weird about thematic structure and how a film is structured out. But I enjoyed it for what it was, and there was things about it where I was just like, I've seen people go to bat for it, like it's this generation's The Bicycle Thief, and I've seen people just absolutely incensed, and I'm just amazed how little I felt about it.
Really?
Will say it's really nice to see that much quality acting in a Star Wars film.
Yeah.
And that was, for me, the best thing about the J.J. Abrams joint was, oh, this is being really well acted.
Yeah.
I also
perfectly, I would say.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
There's nary a bad line read in that movie.
Yeah, I got certain parts of it where the argument against it is like, well, you fanboys expected this. And I was like, I did sort of expect to see some kind of interplay between the characters from the original that was a little more substantive in certain ways. You know, I can imagine it, and I'm sure it happened, but there's certain things like that where I felt like there's a few things they were rushing to sort of like, this isn't your father's Star Wars, where I thought, well, there was a bit of emotional resonance there, like, what happened to Han when Luke says that to Chewbacca, and I know people will roll their eyes and go like, well, Chewbacca, I was like, fucking Chewbacca had the most, like, I felt something when he yelled in that last movie and shot Kylo Ren.
Yeah, you're right in that. I think based on the structure of these movies, so like the guy who I think gets the shortest straw in this one is Finn.
Akbar?
Yeah, Akbar just dies off screen.
Fuck, man.
But,
really?
Yeah.
You know, he had a brother that was dyslexic. He went around the universe finding tarps.
He lived a full life. Akbar lived a full life.
I can still see your murder eyes in the dark.
Yeah. I'm sure you can.
But you felt that...
Well, because his storyline was clearly rewritten, and rewritten dramatically after I think a lot of it had been shot. Because the beginning of that movie, Hux says, well, we have the rebels on the end of a string. Then it smash cuts to Finn. Now, anyone would tell you that the storyline in the next movie is, well, he's a fucking stormtrooper. They can track them, right? And Phasma was going to be the person trying to drag him back to his past. That was all cut out, I think, in favor of this storyline with Rose, which I liked a lot and thought thematically it really came together. So they made a choice thematically what was more important to them. The stuff that they explored with Rose or the stuff that they would have explored with just Finn. I think in the end it damaged Phasma's storyline again. She was cut out mostly in the first movie. And I think thematically the stuff with Finn would have been a lot more resonant had it been about, I am the reason that they can track you. Yeah. I'm the reason that they can find you in space. And it all makes a lot more sense when you think about it that way. Like, when he's trying to escape, his reason for, like, I got to escape, this fleet is doomed. And you're like, wait, what? You're giving up and running away? That's kind of that is a weird place for this character to be at. Whereas it makes a lot more sense for him to be leaving if he's like, I am the reason they can find you. Yeah. I have to go. Yeah. That makes a lot more sense. So, like, it's very clear. And the stuff at the end that they shot with Captain Phasma and everything, like the confrontation they have, it's all a lot more emotionally resonant if this has been the storyline. The storyline was, Finn used to be a stormtrooper. What about that? Instead, they just never really address it. It just never comes up. And I hope there's space for that in the third movie. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, it just, for me, my biggest deal was there are notes there and pieces there that I don't think were emphasized in a way that made them feel as cohesive. You didn't have to fight to create gravitas. Like there was emotion that was generally there that wasn't fully explored, kind of left on the vine. And I mean, it'll launch a lot of great fan fiction. At the same time, part of anything that I like about a lot of media, specifically, I guess I shouldn't choose one of the most popular franchises of all time to talk about with this, but filling in the blanks myself and my take on it and my version of that world versus, no, this is what happened on this page and this is the authoritative reading of it. I love a good conspiracy theory. I love like fan theory and stuff like that, and just kind of putting it out there in my head is good, but it was something where I felt like, hey, there are a few notes you could have emphasized a bit more on this. That said, I really am glad I saw it. I had a blast seeing it. I enjoyed the excitement of it. It looked fantastic.
Yeah. You hope so.
I got... Yeah.
You would hope so.
One would think. I got what I want out of it, but I've really not given it much thought since. I will say the bit with Leia... Space Mary Poppins?
Well, she's force sensitive, so she can do that.
Yeah, it was just a bit much for me, and also
it makes sense. It was a little weird, but it makes sense.
Well,
they needed to show him hesitating to kill her, and that was the only. Yeah. I feel like that was kind of the only way it worked in the story, because otherwise they wouldn't have had a chance to confront each other.
Well, but what had me going there was I immediately had a wall break because unfortunately the princess is no longer with us.
Yeah,
and I thought, oh, that's how that ends.
No, well, it was so early in the film, and it was such a thing. I was like, oh, no way she's dead yet. And it's like, yeah, okay. And they didn't kill her off in the film, so I assume something's going to happen off screen in the next movie.
So it was one of those things where I wonder how much of that had just gotten into my noggin and taken me out of it a bit.
I thought it was very touching, especially the scene with her and Luke at the end of the movie. I cry every time at that scene where he gives her the dice. Like, yeah. That shit gets me. And the Yoda scene. Get me every time.
I've gambled. I've kind of flipped back and forth on the Luke bit, just because, like, I thought, like, well, why would he's doubtlessly caused worse things to happen, even if inadvertently, when in the first round of movies. Why would this fuck him up so bad? And that's kind of once removed. That is fanboy logic. Like, well, you know, if I'd jump in the robot. But it is one of those things where I realize, like, well, coming back to it, you know, he kept going at it in the first series of films, but eventually, yeah, maybe he did succumb to giving up, but he unfucked that giving up portion of it by jumping back in with that thought, with his whole, you know, what happens in the third act. So I've kind of not really wrestled with it that much, but I had some confusion over it. That said, I enjoyed the interplay. And I'm just glad I saw it. I'm glad it functioned like that. I wanted more of certain things, but, you know, people in hell and ice water. I don't think there's going to be a lack of Star Wars stories in the future.
No, I thought that The Last Jedi really took Star Wars from, like, what I like about it. It's similar to what I like about Evangelion. Evangelion's not about science fiction. It's not about the trappings. It's not about the robots. It's about emotion. It's about
UCC coffee.
It's about big, painful, difficult, obnoxious, adolescent emotion is what Evangelion is about. Star Wars is now chiefly about emotion, feeling, theme. That's what it's about. The characters are representative of themes. And before they sort of were, but now those themes are a lot more emotionally complex and serious and like a lot more adult. They're a lot more like the person who wrote Luke's storyline has been through some shit. The people who wrote that movie have like really been through some shit, and it feels very human and real. And like, it's not just stupid power fantasy. It's not a chosen one magic blood power fantasy anymore. It's about people and the shit that they go through. That is like thrilling to me.
Yeah,
it is thrilling that it happened with Star Wars.
And I think it's going to stand the test of time. Well, I think
that movie gives people so much to think about and talk about.
I think it stands. I look forward to spending some time with it in a rewatch, and I liked it. I got what I wanted out of it. I try to clear the mind and go in there and just enjoy the thing. And with me, I'm kind of a viscerally reactive film fan. Yeah. I rarely leave the theater going, that was bullshit because of this, and this. Like, I enjoyed watching Prometheus, and then I got home and thought about it. I was like, what the fuck? Yeah. But I still enjoyed, like, being chased by the creature.
No, I was there in the theater. What the? Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on.
I had some, being real. I had some groaners. I was like, wait, so the dick snake you all take your masks off in this place? What the?
You know, the funny thing about the Prometheus is about 5 minutes of narrative connective tissue that Ridley Scott, for whatever reason, just decided to cut out. And Damon Lindelof, the guy who wrote the script, was like, I don't know why he cut that stuff. It seemed really important to me. Seems like it was really important to everybody else watching the movie too, because it doesn't make any fucking sense without this stuff in it. But he cut it out. Well, and it's already over 2 hours long. So what was he trying to save time?
Knights can do what they want.
Yeah, you're right.
And speaking of Knights and their work, Blade Runner.
Yeah, let's talk about Blade Runner. I loved Blade Runner.
Yeah. I really liked it.
I loved it. Until Star Wars came out, it was my number 4 best movie of the year. Like, I loved it.
I wouldn't watch the trailer. I wouldn't look at anything.
Really?
I would not bother with it. I was like, let me go and experience this and enjoy it. And as somebody like me who's all about runescapes and landscapes and the city and urban studies, I just watched those city shots over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it for what it was. God, that guy's cinematographer, so good.
It's Deakins, right?
I believe so.
Did they get Deakins for that?
Yeah. I'm gonna mispronounce Oh, the director's name.
Villeneuve.
Thank you.
Dennis Villeneuve.
Yeah, I have really dug pretty much everything he's done.
Yeah, I think this is his best movie.
Yeah.
Which is kind of amazing.
Well,
because he made some really good films.
Yeah, it puts. I've really enjoyed it, and it loaned itself well. The thing is funny is if with it's always like one thing of like talk about drawing on the negative. When I dig something that much, of course, the things that I feel are incongruent kind of screw with me all the more.
Yeah.
I don't get why they had somebody who is blatantly as young as Jared Leto play the old guy.
Was he supposed to be old? I thought he was supposed to be like to me he struck me as kind of a this is our take on a Silicon Valley type.
I could see that, but his biggest concern, and this is one of those extraterritorial things, is I had read, again, pseudo certainty popping up. I had read that they wanted Bowie for it, and after I heard that,
I read that too.
After I'd heard that, I couldn't get out of my fucking head.
That would have been cool.
And especially because, just when the concern is legacy, I typically think of that as being a question of. When concerns in power and money and all that stuff, I see that as being something where it's like an aging out thing. Mm-hmm. Like that's the biggest concern over it. And I mean, did a good job with the character. I thought every now and then the synth stabs would come in so hard and heavy that I was like, who mixed this?
Yeah. Well, that's just modern filmmaking, I think. Yeah.
I just want to see where that went. But it's too dark to use the pan, but as the movie looked and as it worked and the ambiguity of it, the first bit with, I guess there's a moisture farmer. Mm-hmm. I'm not quite sure that even just the character playing that character, like, oh my god, this is gonna be great.
Yeah, I remember sitting there leaning over to my husband and being like, this is gonna be really good, and then it totally was for like 3 hours. Yeah. I was just captivated. Like I really wanted to see it again in 3D IMAX before it exited 3D IMAX, but I didn't get the chance.
Yeah, I was hoping to get a chance to catch it. I'm sure it may even be around here. I have tomorrow actually off, so I may take a stab at it. But I was really hoping to see it again just to look at things. I really enjoyed it. I'm just thinking about the colors and the look of it. I mean, there are parts of it where I was kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah. But I'm just like so into how it was shot.
No, you're kind of like me. You're an aestheticist on a certain level. Like you're there for the aesthetic. I have
a weird thing about with I think about the critique of things. I'll find something to make anything interesting on a certain level, and that's why as when I do reviews of things, it's very difficult because I thought like, well, do you want? Oh, should I not talk about my particular take of this? Because I'll watch some horrid animation, but I'll think that the color scheme's brilliant, and if you're like, you're going to watch 13 episodes for a color scheme.
Yeah, I don't think I watched 13 episodes for a color palette, but
yeah.
I would watch 5.
Yeah, but
and if it kept doing new and interesting things, would definitely still watch. You should watch the anime Land of the Lustrous. You should definitely watch.
What's it called?
Land of the Lustrous.
Okay.
I think it's on Amazon, but. Look up a trailer or something.
No.
You'll see what I'm talking about right away.
Yeah, this is
one of the most artistically accomplished anime I've ever seen.
Yeah,
and it's 3D. It's a CG show.
Oh, I should check it. And I think this last year. I mean, granted, who'd have thought that moving across the country, leaving one job, starting another, ending a consultancy, and doing a bunch of other pickup work, and starting a full-time doctoral program would be a little busy.
Yeah.
I did not watch a complete anime series this entire past year, so I'm sort of like... Oh.
It was a really good year for anime, too.
Yeah, I can look at Anime News Network.
You can.
Yeah.
You absolutely can. It's a good place to get all that kind of information.
Thank you. Unmarked consecutive bills. But non-consecutive, sorry. No, it was one of those things, and speaking of that, on that front, I really enjoyed that little... the Blackout prequel animation piece they did.
Yeah, that was cool. I kind of wish there was a little bit more to it, but I guess that's sort of all you needed. But it was a pretty crucial piece of story that's only kind of glossed over in the movie. So
it was nice to... We all went as a group, a bunch of my fellow students went as a group to see the movie. So I said, hey, I have a Crunchyroll subscription. Let's walk into here and project this thing like 2 hours before he left to whet the appetite. And that was awesome. That was really fun. I like those. I really appreciate when they do that kind of thing. I thought it was well directed. I enjoyed it.
Harkening back to the 2000s too, because Warner used to do that with like the Matrix and Batman, and they did a ton of them. They did like a half a dozen of them or something like that. Yeah, there's a Riddick one.
Yeah, I really think that kind of stuff is fun. So I did not get to see as much as I would like to. Unfortunately, right now it sort of feels like a desert's back. I just don't have that much interest in Jumanji.
Don't see Jumanji.
Yeah.
Do not see the Jumanji remake.
Well, I didn't see the first one.
Yeah.
It's just not
It somehow fails to live up to even the expectations of the extremely mediocre 1995 film Jumanji. Yes.
Yeah. Was anything else sticking out for you? Worth watching?
Let's see. What else was amazing this year? Geez, off the top of my head, I listed my 5, and that's what I was really thinking about the most. Was that I try to, at the end of the year, I always make a list, and I just made my list for this a couple of days ago. So that stuff is all really fresh in my head. There's a few things out I need to see. Like I think tomorrow or the next day, I'm going to see I, Tonya, which is supposed to be
fantastic.
Really, you saw it? Okay.
I can't believe I blanked on that. Oh, I've been busy with all this stuff and answering all the questions and writing all the questions. Fantastic.
Yeah, cool.
It's weird to say I had a great time at a movie that's about abuse and anger and failed opportunities.
No, that sounds great. I want to see it.
But it really...
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. Yeah, please see podcast.
Yeah.
I had a really great time. And the first time I was like, okay, I'm fucking with Margot Robbie. Before that, I was just like, oh, she's pretty or whatever, but it's real good.
Yeah.
We saw it, and it was like, well, that was an interesting date night option, but it was good. I messed with that one. I would advise anybody who's interested, specifically if you know me, to pick up the Hanabi reissue Blu-ray.
Okay.
Takeshi Kitano that's my favorite movie.
Oh yeah, that came out.
And to have that on Blu-ray was awesome. It's just that is a movie that I have a certain interpretation of it that took years to get to. I basically kind of think it's a metaphor for how Japan is trapped as an aging economy, but that's a real grad student up my own ass take on it. I love watching it.
That doesn't seem like too up your own ass.
Well, it's when I get into the actual the intricacies of the argument.
Okay.
And where I work and how many times I can use the word as previously used on way in a
Did you
sentence.
see Shin Godzilla?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a movie you could dig into.
Loved it.
A lot of thematic.
Drove 30 miles to see it because it wasn't playing anywhere close.
It's really good.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and
I remember I was at a press junket with somebody he's like, I cover Godzilla movies, and I was like, oh yeah, what'd you think of Shin Godzilla? He's like, I don't really follow Japanese politics that much, and I was like, oh, I do. That movie was great.
Yeah, that's it was one of these things like we're going to talk about urban planning, Japanese politics, foreign policy, giant monsters, and also, by the way, we're going to have a shot of this where you can see the high school where you used to teach at.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just sitting there like, are you going to send somebody out to jerk me off while I watch this movie? Because this can't get any better.
Evan the movie, yeah. Shin Evan.
No, but it was some good times. But yeah, I think this about wraps it up.
Yeah, cool, man. Good
we
times.
should probably get us out of the dark. Do you have a spotlight
totally.
we can do this? Well, thank you so very much.
Thanks, man.
All right, take it easy. Let's see if I can.
It gets dark so fast.
Indeed.